Hello. While I was exploring in Mesopotamia, I found some really neat artifacts that I want to share with you all. So let me give you a close-up of this cool box that I found first with all of these neat artifacts. So here we go. Here's that box. Do you see all those things in there? It's pretty neat. I'll give you a close-up of each one individually and I'll explain them to you. Okay, so first up, I found this map. This is a map of the area of Mesopotamia. I'll bring it in a little bit closer so you can see. In this map, you can see there are the two main rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates River. And there's that green spot called the Fertile Crescent. This is where most of the people who settled in Mesopotamia in the earliest civilizations settled. And you can see there are a lot of cities that are on the river or close to one of the rivers. There's a good reason for that. These people really relied on those two rivers for their livelihoods. It was around these rivers and because of those rivers that they were able to civilize, to form large settlements, to make cities. The first cities actually happened in Mesopotamia, and these cities that they have on here are some of the very early cities here. So you can see also on this map that they're it shows you the relationship of the Fertile Crescent to the rest of the surrounding area. So you can see here's the Persian Gulf down here. There's Egypt down over here. So there's another civilization that'll be popping up over there, the Mediterranean Sea. This is really neat because you can look at all the different geographic features and talk about how those things might have affected the people who lived in Mesopotamia. All right. Ready for my next artifact? I know you are. Okay. This one is so cool. I kind of had to use a shrink ray to shrink it down a little bit because these things were huge. This is called a ziggurat, and it is a sort of temple or religious holy place in the cities of Mesopotamia. And these were the religious centers of the city. There would normally be a temple that is dedicated to one of the main gods in the city, and that temple would be for that god only. And then these temples were dedicated by the kings of the cities individually. And so there would usually be imprints of the king's name that commissioned the work, and then also an inscription talking about which deity it was for. There are some speculations of whether or not just priests could go into the ziggurats or whether normal people, everyday average people, could walk in as well. But we know that they have found some objects in there that have holy significance, and also things that were asked to be blessed. And it was said that if you left an object inside the ziggurat, that would mean blessings upon you and your family. So these were very huge structures in Mesopotamia, and these were some really neat archaeological finds. They were raised up on these individual platforms here. Initially because the first temples would kind of collapse, and so they would build another section right on top of what was the remains of the old one. But then some historians think that they built them in these stacked shapes in order to be higher than the houses of the people that lived in the surrounding city. Because the Mesopotamians believed in a lot of gods, and they believed that those gods came from the mountains. So this kind of symbolized a mountain home for the gods inside the city, which is pretty cool. There are lots of neat pictures you can find of ziggurats all over the world. It's pretty awesome. So that was my second artifact. My third artifact is very intriguing and gives us great insight into the everyday lives and rules of the people who lived in Mesopotamia. Here, I know this one had to be shrunk down with the shrink ray also. This is a pillar containing the Code of Hammurabi. Hammurabi was a great king around 1700s BCE, and he commissioned this pillar that was originally 8 feet tall, and on it, around inscribed, you can see there's some writing on there. That is Hammurabi's code. It is a long list of laws and rules and regulations that people in the civilization had to follow. In here it outlines things like a judicial system. It outlines what happens if you steal from one of your neighbors. It outlines punishments for all different sorts of crimes and all things that you are supposed to do. This is really neat because it shows that there was such a large organization of people around these great cities. And the fact that there was a king who was saying all of these things tells us that this king was really important. And in fact, in Mesopotamia, people believed that the kings were godlike, and sometimes they were even considered gods themselves. So these rules were very important to follow. Another thing about the rules and following them was that the people in Mesopotamia believed that the gods were very easily angered, and the only way that you could appease the gods and keep them happy was to do what you were supposed to do as a good citizen. So knowing what you were supposed to do as a good citizen was very important, and doing that on a daily basis. This would probably have been sitting in like the main square of a city so that everyone could see it and everyone could be responsible for what was going on. I know it looks like the top of it kind of got cut off with the shrink ray. There was a little statue up here that was engraved into it as well. So this was actually found in later years in Persia in a different spot. But it's very cool. This also has this unique writing system on it called cuneiform. And cuneiform is actually the first written language ever in the entire world, which is pretty awesome. The Sumerians, the people who lived in the Sumer region of Mesopotamia, came up with this method of writing. Before this, writing was all picture-based, but now they came up with a writing system based on sounds of letters, which is really amazing. This really revolutionized the way that information traveled, and it really revolutionized being able to get out messages like this to large groups of people. So this is a really cool artifact, and it shows lots of different styles, different letters and things on here, which is really neat. All right. My fourth object is a wheeled vehicle, or a cart. This is really cool because the ancient Sumerians, ancient Mesopotamians, were the first to develop the wheel and to develop wheeled carts. Can you imagine a world without wheels? I know I can't. I saw when I was researching about Mesopotamia before going on my adventure that wheels were actually first invented to use with pottery. And then somehow people decided and discovered that they could use wheels to help transport goods and services across long distances. Because one thing we know for sure about the Mesopotamians is they did a lot of long traveling trips in order to trade with the communities around them. I know you saw on that map there was that big green area called the Fertile Crescent, but all around the rest of that is desert. So there's not a lot of natural resources around in the surrounding areas. So the people in Mesopotamia had to start traveling to get goods and things that they didn't have in their own communities. And this wheeled cart really revolutionized the way that that happened. This also really revolutionized the movement of people and ideas and goods throughout the whole rest of the world, as you know from looking on your car or looking on your bike or looking on your scooter or skateboards or things like that. So that is a really awesome artifact. I've got one more artifact for us. This one is really interesting. This one I could only take a picture of because the artifact itself was really important, really fragile, so I didn't want to take it back with me. But this is called the Standard of Ur. Ur is one of the biggest city-states that was built up in Mesopotamia in the region of Sumer. And this is a decorative art piece. It is actually two-sided. On one side it depicts a king and all of his friends in the elite class up at the top celebrating a feast. And then there are two tiers below it of laborers and farmers who are kind of providing for the feast. So this piece of artwork really shows the social classes in the region of Mesopotamia. And then also on the back side was a depiction, as you can see here, this is the back side, of the king right here, and then in warrior mode. So people believe that if you had peace, you had to secure it with war somehow. This is something that has happened throughout history over and over again, people having to go to war to conserve the things that they really love. The other neat thing about this, besides showing us the social classes and showing us the need for organized armies, is that the materials that it's made from, most of them are not from the area in Mesopotamia. Most of them actually came from places around the world. So there's some red stones in here. Those were probably from India. And there's some shells that were from the Persian Gulf. So there's a lot of evidence in this piece alone that these people had to travel and they traded with countries around them. So this is a really awesome piece as well. And I guess that empties out my treasure box. Thank you for listening and adventuring with me as I explored these artifacts. Have a good day.